Hey guys, this is Test 64 Game 3. This is the Bicycle Riders game. It's a splitting game. We know this because we're dividing the variables, which are the bicycles, into one of two groups based upon whether they are a particular person's first bicycle ridden or their second bicycle ridden or tested. You could lay out this game with either the bicycles F, G, H, J as your base or with the people R, S, T, Y as your base. Either way is perfectly fine. Doesn't really make a difference. It's kind of arbitrary which one you choose in this case because the rules are equally about the people and the bicycles. Although I think it's a little bit better to use the people RSTY as your base due to the final rule of the game, but we'll get to that. Anyway, ignore the bottom diagram for now, just look at the top. We'll deal with the bottom one later. I put down the four people, RSTY, and so this slot would be R's first bicycle, this would be R's second bicycle, etc. They tell us that R cannot test F, so I put that F cannot be in the R row. I put down that Y cannot test J, so J cannot be in the Y row. T is one of the people who does H, so T will either have H on 1 or on 2. We don't know which one. And then finally, the bicycle that Y does on 1 is the one that S will do on 2. So this is the particular rule that I found to be most useful to diagram in this style, with the arrow between Y's first bicycle and S's second bicycle. If you like, you could also make a small notation for the fact that you cannot have the same person doing the same bicycle more than once. So you can never have R do, for example, G on 1 and then G again on 2. So I'll just quickly note this on the side over here. So this is how you indicate that the same person is not going twice, or really the same bicycle, for example, FF, GG, HH, or JJ, is not going as a horizontal box between the first test and the second test for each particular person. Anyway, this is a very bare bones initial setup for the game. However, I would actually recommend making two main diagrams based upon what Y does on 1 and S does on 2, because there are really only two bicycles that it could be. It can't be H that is done by Y on 1 and S on 2, because then T wouldn't be able to do H at all, and we know that it's a requirement that T does H at least exactly once. Also, we know that J cannot be that bicycle because J never does Y. So as such, if we eliminate J and we eliminate H, we know that the Y1 S2 will either be F or G. So I make my two main diagrams based on that. Either I have F on Y1 and then F again on S2, or I'm going to have G on Y1 and then G again on S2. So these are what I use to create the two initial main diagrams for the game. There are a few additional inferences we can make regarding each of these diagrams. For the top diagram, what is Y's second bicycle going to be? Can't be F, can't be J, therefore it has to be either G or H. There's nothing left for Y2 except G or H. Then in the bottom diagram, can't be G, can't be J, therefore it's got to be either F or H. So a couple of little good inferences that we can make here. Not really anything else. This is enough to move on to the questions. Now, question number 13 is a typical orientation question. Just take one rule at a time and apply it to all choices looking for violations. So, for example, we could check for compliance or violations for the fact that Y can never do J. So as you scan through the choices, look for the bicycle J being associated with the person Y, because that can never happen. If you scan through the choices, you'll find that choice D violates this, having Y testing J, which is unacceptable, so D is eliminated. Next, you could look for violations of R testing F. We know that R can never test F, so look for R being tested, the F being tested by R, and you see that choice A has R testing F, which is unacceptable, so A is eliminated. Next, you could look for the Y1 S2 rule, meaning that whatever Y does on 1, S will do on 2. And we see that choice E violates this, having, Y's first bicycle was F, but it was not S's second bicycle. So for that reason, instead we had Y on 1 for F, and then S doing F on 2. So for that reason, E is gone. Down to B and C, we can now use the final rule that we didn't test yet, which is that we can't have we have to have T doing H at least once, or exactly once. And we see that choice B does not have this. T is never doing H, so that's unacceptable, leaving C by elimination for number 13. Next, number 14, if T tests G on the second day. That obviously can't happen in the bottom diagram where T is never testing G. So the bottom diagrams are relevant. We're only using the top one here. And I'm going to put down T testing G on the second day, which means that T has to test H in the first day. So Y's second bicycle cannot be G there because T already has it there on the second column. Therefore, Y is doing F and H. So we can actually make some additional inferences regarding what's happening on the remaining slots here. Neither of the J's has been used yet, and certainly, of course, R cannot do both of the J's. It can only do only one of them. And if R did J on 1, nobody would be able to do J on 2. Therefore, S is doing J on 1, and then we're going to have R doing J on 2, which would, of course, finally leave G to be on R1. So I've been able to flesh out everything fully here. Of course, we didn't actually have to go that far. If we run through the choices regarding what must be true, we see that Y doing H on 2, choice E, happens right there. So we didn't have to flesh out the 3 remaining slots for the R's and then for S1. I just did to show you that it is possible to do that. Anyway, E is our answer for 14. I will look at the rest though. Must R do H on 1? No, of course, R is doing G on 1. So A is gone. R doing J on 1? No, again, it's doing G on 1. T doing H on 2? No, of course, we know that T is doing G on 2, so C is gone, and then T doing J on 1. No, T is doing H on 1, so E by elimination if you didn't get it before. Next, number 15, general could be true except question. So 4 of these things could be true, 1 of them cannot be true. Find the 4 that could be true, eliminate them, and whatever remains is your answer, or if something happens to jump out at you, then, of course, you can pick it. So anyway, R testing J on the first day. Have we ever seen that before? Anyway, actually, yes, we have. Back in 13C, we saw R doing J on 1. As such, we know it's possible. So for that reason, A can be eliminated as it could be true. Next, R testing J on the second day. Have we ever seen that before? Looking at previous work, yeah, actually, number 14, we saw R was doing J on 2, so we can eliminate that as well. Next, looking at C, S doing H on 1. Have we ever seen that before? No, we haven't. Doesn't mean that it's not possible. We can skip it, come back to it. Y doing H on 1. Have we ever seen that before? No, and of course we know that is impossible because we have either F on 1 or G on 1. We never have H on 1. Therefore, it's impossible. So D is our answer for number 15. I will look at E though. Y doing H on 2. Could that be the case? Have we ever seen it before? Yeah, we did back in number 14. We saw Y doing F on 1 and H on 2, so we know it's possible. E's eliminated. I will flesh out C for 15 just to be thorough here. S doing H on 1. So if that were to happen, of course it could happen in either diagram. I'll just flesh out the bottom one here just to pick something. If S is doing H on 1, we know that T is doing H on 2, so T is not doing H on 1. And of course, we know that Y is not doing H on 2. So we fleshed out quite a bit here. We can continue finishing this off. We got to have the J's going somewhere. So we're going to have T doing J on 1, and we'll have R doing J on 2. And then we have to have F going somewhere. This one actually turns out not to work in the bottom diagram because where are we going to have F going? So instead I'll try out the top possibility, S doing H on 1. If S is doing H on 1, of course, T is doing H on 2, so H is not going on T1. And of course, Y cannot do H on 2 because T's got it. We got the J's remaining, so I'm going to put J on T1 and J on R2. We have not yet done G, but G could go on R1. This works perfectly fine, valid scenario. Therefore, we can eliminate C knowing that H on S1 works. Next, number 16, general cannot be true question. Find the 4 things that could be true, eliminate them, and whatever remains is your answer. So we have seen A before. G on day 2 happened back in 13C. Therefore, we know that it is possible, and we can eliminate it. Now, none of B, C, D, or E has ever happened before, so unfortunately, we're going to have to work through a lot of these. One approach you could take to this sort of question is skip it and come back to it when you have more valid scenarios in order to more easily eliminate things that could be true. I'm just going to work through by drawing some hypotheticals now since I want to go through the questions in order for this game. So, could S ever do F on the first day? That obviously would not happen in the top diagram because F is on Y for number 1, So I'm going to have to use the second diagram here. I'm going to put f on 1 right here and see what happens as a result. Of course, f would have to be on y2 because f can never be on r. So we can't have the h's in both of these, of course. So there is some ambiguity regarding the placement of j and h. Either we'll have j on r1 and then have h on t2, or we'll have j on t1 and then h on r2. So two different possibilities here. I'm not even going to bother fleshing them out fully, but as you can clearly see, this is possible. It's not violating any rules. Therefore, we know that B is possible and we can eliminate it. Could T do F on the second day? Well, obviously the top diagram is not going to be relevant here since we have S doing F on the second day, so that one's irrelevant. We'll use the bottom one here. T doing F on the second day would mean that, of course, Y cannot do F on the second day. Therefore, we're going to have H there. Now, the thing is, if H was on T for 1 and on Y for 2, we're going to have F go on either R1 or S1. Obviously, F cannot be on R1, it would have to be on S1. But then we have the J's going on both R1 and R2. That's unacceptable. Therefore, we cannot make a valid scenario where T does F on day 2, and C is impossible, so it's our answer for number 16. Next, number 17, if T does J on the first day. So that could happen in either diagram. I'm going to draw out both of those possibilities in order to be thorough here. So I'm going to put T on J1 for both of these, and of course that automatically requires H to be on T2 for both of these scenarios, meaning that H cannot be on Y2 for either of these scenarios. So on the top diagram, G is on Y2. On the bottom diagram, F is on Y2. And we can continue fleshing things out here. We know that F cannot be on R, so for that reason on the bottom diagram, we're going to have F on S1, and then we're going to have, in the remaining slots, J on R2, and we're going to have H on R1 in order to avoid having the same person test the same bicycle multiple times. Now, in the top diagram, we're going to have G on R1. Actually, G could be interchangeable on R1 or S1, interchangeable with H, could go either way, but what we do know, of course, is that J will have to be on R2 because there's no other empty 2 slot open right now. So these are the two different possibilities for what happens when we've got T doing J1. So now they're asking us what could be true. Could R do G2? No, of course, R is doing J2 in both of these, so A is gone. Could we have S doing H1? Yes, we do see that right in the top possibility. S could do H1 or G1, so B is possible, and therefore our answer for number 17. I will look at the rest, though. Y doing H2. No, Y is doing either G2 or F2, not ever H2, so C is gone. S doing J at some point. No, S is doing F, G, or H. It's never doing H, so it's never doing a J, so for that reason D is eliminated. Then looking at E, T being one of the people who does G. No, T is always doing J and H, J on 1, H on 2 in both scenarios, therefore E can be eliminated, and B is our answer for number 17. Finally, number 18, general cannot be true question. Find the 4 things that could be true, eliminate them, and whatever remains is your answer. So of course, by this point, we have a lot of previous work that we can draw on to help us eliminate things that could be true. So I would recommend running through this choice by process of elimination. So could we have both R and S doing J? Yeah, we saw that back in number 14. We could have had R doing J on 2 and S doing J on 1, so therefore A can be eliminated. Next, looking at B, both R and T doing J. Yeah, we actually saw that back in question 13C. We saw R doing J on 1, T doing J on 2. Also back in our diagrams that we just had for number 17, we also saw this as well, so for that reason, B can be eliminated. Next, looking at C, both R and Y doing J. We could have had R doing G on 1 and Y doing G on 2, so as such we can eliminate C for number 18. Then D, both S and T doing G. We actually never saw this before, and that's because it isn't possible. Let's say we tried to make that happen, and of course that would not happen on the bottom diagram, it would have to happen on the top diagram, where we have S doing G on 1, and then T doing G on 2, which would force H to do T on 1. Then we run into a problem, though. We can't satisfy anything for Y2 which can only ever be G or H. So for that reason, D is impossible, and that is our answer for number 18. I will take a look at E though. So for E, they're telling us both T and Y do F. Obviously, this could never happen in the top diagram. It would have to happen in the bottom diagram. So if that were to happen in the bottom diagram, of course, T and Y both doing F, we would have to have Y doing F2, and then we would have T doing F1. That would force FT2 to be H, and then we would have to have the first H on R1, because if we had it on R2, or if we had it on S1, then we'd have to have both of the J's on top, which isn't going to work. So therefore, we're going to have J on S1, J on R2. This works out perfectly fine. Therefore, we can eliminate E, leaving D as our answer for number 18.